Thank you, Edsky. Cool, thank you, and welcome to the Reactor episode 4. So we've got a really good one for you tonight. So 2 people I'm very happy to be able to call friends, Alex and Davey. We've been working together for some time now, so pretty pleased to have those with us. So just a few bits of housekeeping to start with. So we're going to obviously have the first hour of the podcast, which will be an open discussion between the 3 of us. And we're going to be discussing creator relationships with publishers today, which is, I think, a really hot topic for all you guys who are growing streamers and are looking to try and build these relationships and build your brands online. Sorry, I've got a bit of an echo. Excuse me. Turn that off. So we're going to have that first hour of open discussion, and then we're going to have half an hour of questions from chat. So Emma's going to be in there pulling out all your questions. So make sure you're getting those in nice and early and put your name on them if you want to be called out. We had a few last week, but we couldn't actually credit you guys with the questions. So just bear that in mind when you're getting that across. And then we've got a couple of exciting announcements at the end. So over the last few months, hopefully you guys all know that we're doing the Creator Grants, which is our way of giving back to the community. So our aim is to try and support in a relatively minimal way at the moment, but we're hoping this is going to grow to try and help you with some streaming equipment and also introduce you to 3 of our partners, which are Gamer Advantage, Advanced, and Evolve, who are all going to give you store credit to help you build towards your stream and build towards your content quality moving forwards. And then our friend here, Davey from Deep Silver, has also very kindly offered to give away 2 full sets of codes for Metro Exodus PC Enhanced, which is really easy to say, as we discovered
That's the one.
in our pre-conversation. So we'll be giving those away, and we'll be showing you an extended trailer as well for the game at the end of the stream, so make sure you hang around for that. So welcome, guys. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. I know we kind of speak quite regularly on and off, kind of off stream, so it'd be good to have a catch up, but also kind of dig into those brains a little bit and try and share some knowledge with our community. So I think the first thing really is just to give a bit of an introduction to yourselves, what you've done, how you've got to this point. Obviously, you've both had very different journeys, one on the industry side and then on the creator side. So do you want to kick us off, Alex?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So I'm Alex, also known as Arix, part of Arix Gaming. So myself and 269 and Paradise Central now currently run the channel. But if you kind of go back in history, kind of quick context, myself and Matthew, aka 269, used to work at Microsoft. We did that for like 3 years. Worked in test, then moved into like production. And then while we were there, kicked off the YouTube channel. So both myself and 26 kind of launched it together. Initially, just sort of started kind of like finding our feet, learning the content way, and then fast forward, left Microsoft, went full time on YouTube, started to sort of build that, and then Paradise Central joined us. So we've started to kind of grow and build a team. And then more recently, last year, we also launched Endgame, which is our gaming apparel and accessory sort of brand where we used to sort of, sell clothing, other accessories. Recently, we've worked on some licensed products with Capcom. So that was a pretty fun thing as well. And also last year kicked off video games as well, which is another brand all under the sort of Arix Gaming umbrella that encompasses fitness and gaming, basically trying to make fitness as accessible as possible to everyone, but kind of explains fitness stuff through the terms of video games. Video games.
Awesome, man. Yeah. I mean, all of those reasons are one of the reasons I was excited to get you on the podcast, really, because you've not only grown as a creator, but you've built these brands around you. So we very carefully titled you creator and entrepreneur because you are a businessman in the sector, which I don't think a lot of people can say. I think a lot of people obviously have their own. Sorry, go on.
No, I was gonna say, yeah. I guess when you sort of, it's one of those sort of weird terms. It's like I never sort of like see it that way, but I guess when you sort of talk about it in the kind of definition of what it means to be an entrepreneur and do that stuff, I guess that's that is true. Yeah, we're just kind of trying to sort of build different things and learn as you go, because a lot of these things we've never had prior experience with. So it's also been like a massive learning process for us. When we jumped into creating like Endgame and doing all this stuff, like, working these products, we had no idea. We just had to kind of like learn as we go. But it's been fun. It's been nice to sort of be able to look back and just see what's possible, really.
Yeah, and it definitely gives us another kind of topic to talk about there, because obviously you deal with publishers from a licensing perspective as well for like some of your gear, which would be interesting to have a bit of a chat about. So I'm sure that's not an easy process.
No, that's
the bureaucracy of the big machines.
I can say for sure that despite what people think from an external point of view, I do not play video games all day. There is much more to my day than playing games. But yeah, no, true, definitely, yeah. There's a lot of like loopholes and stuff, which I'm sure, or not loopholes, sorry, red tape and all that kind of stuff you have to deal with and stuff. But it's all it's all part of the process, all things that's useful for people to understand. Because I definitely think, as I'm sure people will benefit from when it comes to talking about the creator space, whether that be working with publishers and partners and things. It's very easy to sort of look at it from the outside and be like, oh, this must be how it happens. But then when you start working with companies and you realize, okay, there's certain things you need to keep in mind, like that. Having that knowledge is definitely important. So I'm sure we'll touch on that today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of the reasons I wanted you guys kind of sat next to each other to have this discussion is that the difficulties are there on the publisher side as well, 100%. And it's a lot of these questions we're going to ask you, they're 100% relevant on both sides. So me and Davey had the pleasure of working together at Game. And Davey was working with the influencer for Insomnia, had some amazing relationships there, and then moved into this role. So I'd love to hear a bit more about kind of your history, Davey, and how you got into this space as a very fast-growing area of marketing.
Totally. It's a weird one with where the stars kind of all aligned, to be honest with you. So I started off way back when, particularly as a kid, acting. And it got to the point where it was either kind of carry on and do that full time and go along with all the risks and all the kind of reward of that lifestyle. But just at the same time as well, it was, okay, well, do I want to go to uni? Do I want to go and study something more creative, something that was a bit more kind of spoke to the other part of my brain. And one day I just went, you know what, I'm going to go to uni, I'm going to go and study media and film, I want to do production, I want to get much more into kind of making content and that kind of thing. And this is just when YouTube started to kind of really take off. So as this was all happening, I was watching a lot of creators in the UK, people like a lot of the British vloggers like Joe Sugg and Casper Lee and Alfie Days, and really getting into those guys when I was at uni. Graduated with a degree in media, film and cultural studies, and decided that marketing was the kind of area that I was really, really keen to go into. I think I had this kind of view that it was going to be a Miranda Priestley, Devil Wears Prada, Emily kind of lifestyle. Whereas my first job out of uni was for a B2B IT company in a little town near where I live. And it certainly was not that. It was incredible in terms of learning about commercial B2B sales-led marketing. It was amazing, but it was certainly not Miranda Priestley and Devil Wears Prada. But a lot of the people who I used to act with were then kind of transitioning from performing and going into being creators themselves. A really good friend of mine called Mikey Piers, his YouTube was taking off, and he was really good friends with people like Connor Maynard, Jack Maynard, like Josh Peters as well. And I ended up being in a few videos with those guys, started to get to know them really well, moved over and got a job at Game in the social media team, picked up influencer marketing there, or as I was saying to you guys before, when we called it digital talent, before we kind of called it influencers or creators, we used to refer to it as digital talent, which now just seems so archaic. But because I knew some of these guys from videos and stuff that we'd worked on, it was quite natural to pick up that side of things and start working with them. Then Game bought a company called Multiplay, which at the time ran an event called Insomnia, which is the UK's biggest gaming festival. I then moved over to that team and kind of ran social, PR and creators for the event. Got stuck in with a load of the creators at the show, built up some really amazing relationships and friendships with creators there. And I'm sure we'll come on to this later on, but when we talk about kind of growing creators and having creators grow with you as a brand, there's some really great lessons from my time at Insomnia. Did that for 3 years. The Insomnia event became much more creative focused, which was brilliant, and kind of felt like I did everything I could do there. Went and did a very, very similar thing for an event up in Glasgow called Resonate Total Gaming Festival, did some freelance stuff, did some agency stuff, and then just as I was looking for a new role, Deep Silver were also looking for someone to come on board and run the influencer division globally for the first time, and the stars kind of aligned, and yeah, then I went over to Deep Silver.
Awesome, man. It's a hell of a journey. So when you
Yeah.
got into influencer marketing, was that something that you kind of saw there was a need for and kind of volunteered for? Or was it a role that kind of needed filling? How did that kind of happen? Because I guess at the time it was, let's say, like digital talent, but it wasn't really anywhere near as established as it is now in terms of
No.
the marketing sector.
Totally. It was something that was just starting to be spoken about. And because that I was kind of getting into it via some of my friends, it was that kind of thing at game happened quite naturally. But it didn't really properly take off. Like we did a bit, did a bit of stuff here and there. Did a TV campaign with James Buckley, completed it, mate, from the Inbetweeners, and did some stuff with some creators around that TV campaign. But even though we were working with influencers, it was still very kind of traditional media focused. Like it wasn't quite ready to go full, YouTube campaign. It was TV and like a little bit of YouTube here and there. But when I moved over to the events business, to Insomnia, it was quite a natural progression that I came in initially to purely look after social media. Then it made sense for PR to kind of sit under me. And then if PR was sitting under me, it made sense for our creator relationships to fall under me as well. So it all grew quite naturally. But the Insomnia event was very much ahead of its time in the sense of it had a lot of great relationships and had been kind of doing influencer marketing way before anybody else, because the difference being, I suppose, when the creators are part of the content of the show, they really are, it's much more authentic, and there's much more kind of interest there because people can go to the show and meet their favorite creators. So there was always something really quite natural about that, and that was something that they adopted really early. So I just kind of took it over and grew it. So I think it was definitely a mixture of the timing being right in the sense of, it was taking off and that kind of world was becoming massive. The event had been doing it for a long time anyway, and it was something that I was interested in. It was something that I had relationships in. So it all just kind of, happened very, very naturally. But yeah, I mean, I've always been obsessed with YouTube and Twitch and watching creators. So yeah, definitely right for me.
Cool. So I think I suppose the goal of this is to kind of put ourselves in the shoes of the guys that'll be watching the stream. So these are growing creators looking to take the next steps. There might be new creators that have never dealt with a publisher before. So I'm going to kind of ask you guys the same question, just to try and see what challenges kind of exist on both sides, really. Try to give a bit of insight behind the curtain before these guys get into kind of having those conversations. So I suppose the first one is kind of getting in the door. So Alex, I'm sure you've had a very different experience when you first trying to get into kind of those conversations with publishers than you do now, where you've got a big pitch deck that you take to these guys and you can present your success. Like, how did you kind of start having those conversations early doors?
I mean, earlier, I think early on we learned some hard lessons very early on that I think it's important to realize. Not to kind of try and sort of jump the gun too early. I think a lot of people, I completely understand it. Obviously, especially as the creator space is growing a lot of the time, a lot of creators might sort of be like, oh, like for example, let's say a new game's coming out. Sometimes PR or community managers might put out things on Twitter and be like, hey, if you wanna code, reach out to me, this kind of thing. I think it's still very important to realize that you need to know what your value is. Like and even on small creators, they still have plenty of value. But it's important to realize, like, if you need to look at yourself realistically and be like, all right, if I'm someone that's trying to grow my stream, but right now I'm streaming to like 2 people, if I go to a company and say, hey, I want to code, you need to respectfully understand that it's a transaction, right? You want something from them, they want something from you. And if you are only driving to a very small number of people, you need to understand they're probably not going to be able to accept you. Now, some people are cool with this. Some people, however, don't always take it the right way. I think it's very important to realize that there comes a point where you just have to look at yourself and be like, look, I want to do this stuff, but I need to invest in my growth a little bit more, because obviously it shows a lot more. Even it doesn't, and again, that's important to understand that it doesn't mean to say you have to have 100,000 subscribers or like 10,000 concurrent people on Twitch. You can still do this with lower numbers, but you need to also be realistic. Some people will be like, right, I started my Twitch stream yesterday. I'm gonna go and apply for a code today. Why have I not been accepted? It's like, you need to realize that ultimately, it is marketing, right? Even if someone gives you a code, you need to do something on their behalf. So I think one of the first things is just to like genuinely be realistic and look at what you've done and be like, do I have enough of a value proposition right now? If your answer, if you can reliably say, you know what, yes, every single one of my videos is really good, get some decent engagement, might be smaller numbers, but there's something I can talk about here. That's great, because ultimately that's what you want to pitch to someone, right? You want to go in and be like, even if you're a small creator, you can go to someone and be like, look, I've got 5,000 subscribers. Each of my videos right now gets, 500 views, but there's some steady engagement here. I get some kind of consistent views across the board. And then there might be situations where there are super limited codes and you might still not fall within that bracket, but other times it might work for you. So I think it's definitely important. 100% you need to just be realistic with yourself initially. Once you get to that point though, I definitely say, in current times it's obviously a little bit tricky because there are no in-person events. I would definitely say meeting people in person does go a long way because, again, respectfully, you need to understand that, especially if the game is hot, PR, community managers, their inbox gets swamped. So if you send a message, expect, it's not that they're not replying to you because they're being rude. Their inbox is horrific when games come out, right? So you've got to understand that you might just not be being seen. Whereas obviously if you've had a chance to meet someone face to face, you're like, yo, how's it going? They suddenly know your face. That's definitely a lot easier to do. But understandably, you can't always do that. Sometimes it might be like a location thing. So beyond that point, I would definitely say you need to work out who is the best person to go to. The other thing I see that a lot of people do is they'll just go to the first person they can seemingly connect to the game. They might be like, hey, you're like an artist in the studio. Hey, can you get me a code? That doesn't work. Or like, oh, hey, you're a CM, but you're in America and I'm in like Europe. Can you get me a code? It's like they're not in your region. You need to understand you have to find the right person because otherwise they can't help you. They might want to help you, but like European people will only be able to help European creators. So I think you need to find out who that is and then, maybe try and strike up a conversation. Sometimes on Twitter, people, CMs, especially, they'll have like their DMs open. So sometimes you can just message them. But again, you have to also be realistic. You have to be able to be like, look, I'm going to send this message, but I'm also going to appreciate that they're very busy. There is a chance they might not see my message. So I'd say you also need to plan for this. You have to plan contingencies. So one thing that we did a lot of the time when we would be, when we started, I even do it now. Like if a big game is coming out, I'll reach out to a publisher and I'll be like, hey, can I have a code for this? Or can we have X number of codes for this? But we'll still pre-order the game because I'm like, if they don't get back to me and I don't get a code, I still need to cover the game. I still need to show that I'm committed to doing what I want to do. So I have the contingency in place. So if it doesn't happen, yeah, okay, obviously it's going to make your life easier if you have early access. But if you don't have it, you still need to do that content.
Yeah, absolutely. So from a practical standpoint, I suppose an interesting question if we kind of rewind a little bit about value. When did you start kind of like diving into your numbers and looking at this like pragmatically to say, okay, these are the kind of things we need to improve on, like whether it's views or whether it's engagement on social, that kind of stuff. And how did you start attaching that to any kind of value? Because it sounds like the entry level that you're suggesting is kind of getting code, starting relationships that way, making content off the back of that and kind of building a relationship. But in reality, like what kind of things are you using to kind of dictate your own value?
To be honest, early on, we didn't really have like an exact answer to that because it is quite difficult to work because everyone values things differently as well. Some companies will be like, some companies might work with third parties and third parties will just have to look at things on a surface level. They'll be like, all right, how many subscribers you got? What's your average views? That's as far as they can go. Whereas some other companies might want to sort of spend time, if they've got like a limited campaign and they really want to make sure someone's a fit, they might dive a little bit deeper. They might be like, your views might not be as high as X channel, but you are a better fit for the brand because your style of content works. And so there's I don't feel like there's a one and done answer for that. But what I will say is that it's just about trying to sort of think about you can even just look about like across the board, just sort of think like look at your average views for videos, just sort of see if you've kind of got any kind of consistency, and you can test the waters. Early on we just used to have a boilerplate email that we would send out to publishers when like games would come out, and it'd just be like, hey, my name's so and so, I run this channel. We currently have X number of subscribers. Our average monthly views are X. This is what we typically get on a video. This is what our past 30 days looks like. It just used to be a pretty standard thing. But again, you need to understand that obviously someone on the other end, whether that be PR or CM or anything like that, they need numbers, right? Because again, this is a transaction. So if you can just make their life easier and they can open your email and be like, all right, cool. This is a 1,000 subscriber channel. Their average views for the past 30 days has been like 250,000 views. Average video is this. They can already look just instantly and be like, you know what, this person knows what they're talking about. I can make it work. Or like, sorry, it just doesn't quite tick the box. But that's what I'd say initially. You might not know your value, but very early on, just try and get a snapshot of what your channel has, even if it's not astronomical numbers, and then you can start putting that on paper.
So, I mean, that same question to you, Davey, because it's really interesting to hear like what your view on that is, because obviously you're the one that's kind of doing the filtering as such. Like you're the one with the busy inbox. It's like, okay, what numbers are here? Like, are you going to all these channels and watching their content to see what kind of people they are? Are you shortlisting first? Like, how does that process work?
Totally, and it's so. First of all, I couldn't agree more with everything that Alex said. It's so great to hear it from your side as well, and just kind of have that reaffirmed, because I would answer that, almost word for word. And the reality is that it's complicated, and it's really complicated because each company, whether that be gaming or not gaming, do it differently. There will be people who, so take Deep Silver for example. I look after all of our content creators and influencer marketing for all of our games globally. That is my role. Influencer marketing, that's it. The CM for Metro wouldn't kind of decide which creators we work with, but they'll be the person at the end of the Metro inbox. Whereas for another publisher, it will completely be the CM who is deciding who is being worked with from a creator perspective. It could be PR, it could be a specialist influencer person. It could be an agency that you don't even know the name of this agency because it'll never be published, and they make all the decisions, and then they just send a report up to the marketing director and say, we worked with 15 creators and we achieved this result. So I think really, to kind of anchor what was said, it's about understanding who the best person is to speak to. LinkedIn is such a great way to be able to do that, because you can quite quickly understand what the structure is. And I know that if you're thinking about this kind of for each company you need to do, it seems daunting, but if you kind of think of those key businesses or key brands, key publishers in gaming that you do want to work with, definitely take some time and find the business on LinkedIn, click on the little section that says employees, see what people's job titles are, try and work out what the reporting structure is, add them on LinkedIn, see if they are connected to any agencies, or see if they posted about any agencies that they work with, and just try and get your head around kind of who's who. And then completely, it's all about understanding your value. I think now, if you are a smaller creator, over the last, really, I would say the last 3 years, really over the last 2, and certainly over the last 1, there's been this real massive focus on the value of what we would call micro influencers in marketing. So smaller creators who you might work with en masse. So maybe, that could really mean anything, but that could mean, say, for example, if it was an Instagram creator, that might be 3,000 Instagram followers, but you might work with people who have 3,000 Instagram followers, but you might work with 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 of them. So instead of working with one larger creator, you're working with multiple smaller micro influencers, and what you're getting is a really quite highly engaged, super targeted, pinpoint accuracy campaign. You might also be working with people with tens of millions of subscribers at the top, but as part of that campaign as well, you're really focusing in on these smaller creators and these people who have a real, genuine, high engaged audience and high engaged connection to their audience. Because of course, the larger you grow as a creator, the less personal relationship you can have with your audience, because there are so many of them that you have to kind of keep up with. It gets to a point that becomes impossible. So brands certainly see the value of smaller channels, without doubt. But once you've kind of identified who the right person is, it's also what kind of understanding does that person have, or where's their mindset at, what their strategy is. There's so many different considerations, and it is going to be completely different for each business. But for me, if I had a creator reach out to me either on email or on my personal Twitter and say, hey Davey, I am really interested in getting a code for Metro Exodus PC Enhanced Edition, which has come out today.
That's like,
yeah, thank you. Here's my channel. These are my stats. These are the amount of concurrent viewers I get, or this has been my growth over the last 30 days, or this is how many subscribers I have on YouTube, but my average view rate is X. Really kind of understand your analytics, really understand how you can position yourself and how you can kind of tell your story. And again, think about what that value is, and don't get put off by small numbers, because small numbers actually as worked with correctly in a really nice campaign, can be super valuable. But completely position it in the right way. From the moment you send that DM, you are marketing yourself. So if you can spend some time creating like 2 slides on a PowerPoint, which is kind of like your media pack or about you, about your channel, and you send that to the right person, oh my God, they will be, I would be blown away if I got that, because a lot of the time, like you said, you do just get, hey, can I have a code? And you kind of have to manually go through and think, oh, okay, well, who is this person? What's their channel? Kind of, work that out for yourself. And if it is on launch day of a game, you might be getting 50, 100, 400, 500 of those. And this is why, and I'm sure we'll be able to talk about this more later, but this is one of the reasons why I created the Deep Silver Creator Collective. It's a centralized point for all creators to go to apply and be in our creator program. And then once you're in that creator program, you have access to, codes and then some. So whilst you're kind of doing all your research on the company and research on who's who, definitely check to see what their process is to manage creators, because they might also have their own creator program. Epic have one, we have one, EA has Game Changers. A lot of people in gaming have these creator programs that if you kind of search Deep Silver creator program, we should come up on Google. Epic creator program, they will as well. Even retailers have them, so definitely kind of check to see if there is, because that will be their formal process, and that will be like an application process like ours is. So yeah, the reality is there's a lot of different answers to that question, and it all depend on what's
the campaign, who you are, and yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned something interesting there that we've never covered before, which is agencies, which I think is a really interesting one, because obviously their job is to build relationships between people like you two. They've got people on the books on both sides. How much of a recommendation would you guys give, and what kind of experience have you had with agencies? Because I'm assuming it must lighten your load, and obviously there's compromises to be made when working with an agency, but is it something you guys would consider at a relatively early point in a creator's career? Sorry, I'll ask Alex first.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so from a creative point of view, I guess you're talking more so about because our dealing with agencies is more so, when reaching out to publishers, right? I assume that's the context you mean. Yeah. So I mean, I guess in that situation, it's definitely still fine, because from a application point of view, you're still speaking to somebody who's then in charge of that. What I will say is that sometimes, and again, it varies depending on agency. The one difference is, like I was sort of saying before, about depending on who you deal with and depending on how people will process creators. Some people, if they work direct, they're more inclined to dig a little bit deeper into the channel, sort of find out if that person might be a fit. Obviously, if an agency is covering loads and loads of different things, they tend to be a lot more surface level. So if you're dealing with an agency and you're a small creator, the harsh reality is sometimes it will just be, they'll just look at your numbers. They'll be like, all right, how many subs you got? How many views you got? Sorry, you don't meet the thing. Whereas if you're talking to someone, on the first, the first kind of layer, so to speak, they might take the time to be like, all right, you know what, you might be smaller, but thanks, Mom. Thanks, Watch. My watch talk to me. They might be like, oh, you might be a little bit smaller, but I can see the value here. But obviously the agency will they'll just be given instructions. They'll be like, please, can you go and find this X creator, 10, 20, 30 creators. Here's a rough benchmark. So it can be a little bit tougher if you happen to deal through them. Not to say it's impossible. And again, you should still apply the exact same logic. You should still reach out and be like, look, this is my point of contact. This is what I have to offer. You just need to realize that because there is another layer between you and the person you want to speak to, it is easier to kind of just get put into just a basket and be like, I just don't meet the quota. But then if that happens, you just need to take it all as a learning process. We did that. I think it's very sort of easy again for a lot of people kind of trying to start right now to be like, oh, it must be, it's super difficult to kind of grow or get discovered, but everyone starts small. And we did the exact same thing. Like when we first started, we had so many people that just turned us down or just didn't reply and stuff. But whenever that happens, you just have to be like, all right, I'm going to keep going anyway, because the underlying reason is I would like to think, you should be creating content because you want to be creating content. So while 100% without question, having access, having all this stuff makes your life infinitely easier, if you don't get that stuff, you should still want to make that content anyway. So it kind of goes back to the contingency I was saying before. It's if you throw out your messages with the hope that you might get picked and you might get the opportunity, But if you don't, then you just double down on the content. When that game comes out, you do the best content you possibly can. So then the next time that opportunity comes around, you can turn around and be like, look, here's what I did for X game. Because that's another great use case. You know, you might not be the biggest creator, but let's just say, like, I don't know, let's say an RPG comes out, and then like the next version of that RPG comes out. You're like, well, the last game I did like 50 different guides. I showed people where to find all these secret items, and I like covered the game astronomically. And then they might just look at it and be like, well, you know what? This small channel did 50 videos, whereas this one big channel just did the one video and then they didn't do anything else. And they'll be like, well, all right, we can see your value now. So yeah, 100%. Just make sure that no matter what you do, you still double down on what you created the channel for. And then if you don't get the opportunity now, you'll get it later on.
Yeah, awesome, man. So, David, from your side, how often do you lean on agencies? So, I mean, obviously, you know, I guess it depends on campaign scale and things, but how much of a resource is it for you?
It does, and do you know what? I realise a lot of the time that because my background is so events focused, that a huge number of years in my career I've spent, really building close, personal, one-on-one relationships with a lot of creators who were either massive at the time and still are, or were much, much smaller, and now they're huge. And I kind of over that time have developed a lot of direct relationships. So sometimes agencies will come to me and say, I can give you access to this person, this person, this person. And I think, okay, that's great, but I've already got that. But whereas a lot of brands don't have that at all. A lot of people, could have been working in this space for kind of a long time, but never actually directly worked with an influencer if they've all kind of gone through agencies. Whereas, as you can imagine, in an event scenario, 6-7 days at the NEC, casino every night, like you get to you make quite good friendships as you go along. Absolutely. I've done some of my best deals at the Genting Casino at the NEC. But my point is that for me, an agency is always about scale, not so much about access. And I had a thing actually last year where a big creator friend of mine put me in contact with a different creator that I didn't have access to, I hadn't worked with before, but I know someone who he was friends with, so they kind of put me in touch that way. So there's a huge kind of like networking element to this as well. But an agency for me is much more about scale. Because even if you think about it in terms of code fulfillment, you could send one agency an Excel spreadsheet that has 500 codes in, and they can go off and make sure that those 500 codes go to 500 creators, and we get a load of great coverage. When it comes to a paid campaign, I could say, this is the budget, go away and come back to me with some results. I never do that because I'm far too involved and far too invested and far too every little detail I want to make sure that we're involved in, and that I'm involved in. But there are some brands who will do that. So there'll be some brands where the agency actually makes a huge amount of those decisions. And also when we start looking at agencies, there is kind of the more traditional PR agency or social agency or influencer agency out there that will work with loads and loads of different brands. So actually, if you can get in with the right people at the right agency, that will unlock quite a lot of opportunities for you. But just like Alex says, the kind of flip side to that is if you don't meet the kind of criteria that the brand has set out, then you can very easily kind of be filtered out. But there's also these kind of other opportunities with platforms where it's much more self-service and are often much more focused on smaller creators. And when I talk about platforms, I talk about things like Influencer, the Ben Jeffries and Casper Lee business, and there's a whole host of other ones like this as well. Things like GameSite have this. Also, there was one a while ago called Gaming Circle and things like that, where you can go on and kind of register yourself, and then brands can go and self-serve and say, I'm looking for creators who meet X, Y, and Z, and often they will be targeted at the smaller creators and much more kind of micro-engaged creators as well. So as much as in one instance and in one hand you can get filtered out quite quickly, also on the other hand, it will unlock a lot more kind of opportunities for you as well. Because these agencies will be working with so many different brands and so many different companies. And there are some instances my end where it really is, to be honest with you, a bit of both. It's this is what I want, these are the creators that I'm after, but can you help me kind of fill in the blanks, or can you help me build this out, or this is what I want to do from a global perspective, but how can we really make this work in Germany or France or Spain or in the UK? So an agency can provide varying different levels of support. And sometimes for me, it can be just about scale. Like, I want to do this on a really large scale for this campaign. Just the time it would take kind of me and my team to even process those invoices can be astronomical. For an agency, in terms of streamlining it, it can, I'm then dealing with one person from an agency who's then kind of dealing with the 100 other people involved in that campaign. Whereas I will make the decision, but the actual kind of legwork, if you like, is being done by our agency partner. So yeah, it depends. It can be it's definitely advantages and disadvantages to both. But if you are a creator, I go back to what we used to say back in my performing days, which was you have to network to get work. So it is know everyone, and absolutely, like Alex says, and I know you can't do this now, but that whole at an event, gaming, right, for me, is one of the best industries because we have so many massive events and so many smaller events as well. Like, when we are in a kind of normal world, you can be at something kind of every month, and a lot of the same people are as well. Like, I left the industry for 6 months, never will leave the industry again, but I went into this award ceremony for this kind of new sector that I went into, walked through the door and didn't know anybody. And I kept thinking, if this was like the esports awards, or this was the MCV awards, or if this was E3, you'd walk into a room and you would know 50, 60, 100 people. It's one of those things where just get to know everyone, get to know who the agencies are, get to know who the brands are. And you won't, you're not making a nuisance of yourself because you're all in the same business. You're all in the same sector together. So yeah, meet everyone, talk to everyone. Don't do one thing or the other. Get to know everybody.
I'll have to pick your brains about agencies and influencer programs and stuff that you were talking about there off stream, and we'll email them out to the guys that are watching, just so they've got a few things to follow up on. Because I think it's getting these guys familiar with those kind of agencies, how they operate, the opportunities that exist. Some of the guys will be at that kind of scale already where they can kind of put themselves in a good situation, I think. So I'll harass you via email, and we'll try and pull together a bit of an action list. So I suppose the next big thing is really kind of raising awareness of what kind of opportunities exist. And I suppose from your side, Davey, this will be kind of going over the Creator Collective and all the stuff you've done there to kind of make those opportunities more available and more visible. But Alex, on your side, like, what, in terms of variety of activities and varieties of opportunities you've had with publishers, is there any kind of that stand out for you, or any kind of really different ones that people might not be thinking about in terms of how they potentially get into those kind of relationships?
I mean, I guess it kind of sort of depends on what side you're talking about. Whether you're talking about just in general, like meeting people and kind of getting to know people, or whether you're talking about taking it to the next stage and talking sponsorships and other opportunities to work with people. On the one hand, it's kind of sort of like David mentioned, like obviously events are probably one of the best ways to get started for a lot of things anyway. And even so, like, some people might say, all right, well, you say events are great, but some of these events are invite only. How do I deal with that? But what you often realize is that some events, there's a lot of games, there might be like two versions. There might be, say, a like an invite only one, because there might be like media and creators there that are doing capture, but then sometimes they'll have like a public version. There might be like it might be like a launch event for a game. Even going to things like that, because while not all the same people will be there, typically at least like community and PR will still be present there, right? So it still is a chance to meet people. So definitely going on to those things 100%, I think is interesting opportunities, but also just like looking online sometimes, even smaller things, just like if there's chances to get involved in betas and other things like that. Like, you might not necessarily instantly think, oh, if I do this, then like it's an instant step to getting noticed. But if you think about it in sort of the longer timeline, like what we often used to do for games is, if there's something that you're super passionate about, we would pre-cover games for quite some time. So you go back into like the days we used to cover Division. We were covering that game 2 years before it even came out. It would be, oh, there's an interview online, let's use this as an opportunity to spin up a video. Oh, there's been a 30-second trailer. Let's break this down in like 10 different ways, right? But if you really want to do that, because you need to suddenly start seeing anything and everything as an opportunity. And again, like not all of these need to be things that you can actively attend or actively like grab hold of. Sometimes you just need to see it as like, oh, here's a content opportunity, and if I invest in this enough, eventually when it comes to it. So again, that perfect example is like, all right, cool. You can look at the landscape and think, looter shooters are a great example. Like, okay, cool. Loot-based games are kind of games that people will play for a long time. So, all right, this one looks cool. I'm going to cover all the news. I'm going to get involved in a beta if there happens to be one. I'm going to dissect this in 20 different ways. And then you realize that when you suddenly get to the point where the game is coming out and then CMs are putting out their messages to say, hey, who wants a code? You might be a smaller creator, but suddenly you've got a back catalog of like, hey, here's 30 videos I've made for your game, and your game isn't even out. And they're like, oh, well, that's just an insane proposition, right? So I think sometimes you need to realize that like opportunities don't always have to be things that you are handed or kind of given or things like that. You just need to also just see ways that you can basically make yourself more visible.
Mm-hmm. So from a practical standpoint, you mentioned there kind of like sponsored videos, obviously getting codes and that kind of stuff, which kind of like, so it's the more practical side of those relationships. Do you kind of have a bit of a short list there of kind of, okay, you're going to go to a publisher, like we can get this video sponsored, we can get these codes. There's probably an opportunity here to get sponsored to go over to the launch event and all that kind of stuff. Is there anything there that you kind of like typically look for so these guys can get a bit more of an idea of kind of the opportunities that kind of on
Yeah, I mean, I definitely say that. I would definitely say that comes a little bit later. So I definitely think if you're starting out, not to say it can't happen, but I would definitely say that stuff does come a little bit later. It's not always based on your size, but sometimes it's just based on the relationship. For example, like if you just met a publisher, they're not straight away going to be like, all right, we're going to fly you to a launch event or we're going to pay you to do this video. Again, you need to think about like, I need to consistently show that I can deliver, because if you're doing sponsored content, for example, it's a known factor that sponsored content will typically perform lower than like your regular content. It's just a thing, right? But there's a certain degree of acceptability in that. But then you need to realize that kind of stuff, you can always, like 100%, you can always go to a publisher with an idea. You can, there's nothing to say you can't write a little email or put together a pitch deck and be like, hey, I've got this idea. Here's what I want to do. Again, you would put in some numbers. You'd be like, here's my plan. Here's the numbers I would typically get. Here's what I want to do with it. Would you sponsor that? You can take ideas to them, but you need to keep in mind that publishers a lot of the time will have set budgets for certain things. So those situations, at least from our experience, have typically been the other way around, where a publisher will then come to you and be like, we've got budget. What can you do for this game? So I would say in situations like that, at least have a plan. If a publisher comes to you and they're like, hey, we've got some budget. What can you do for our game? If you just say, I'll make a video, that's not useful. If you can be like, all right, your game's coming out, I can break that into, a beginner's guide and like a weapon tutorial. I can break this into like a how to, 5 things you need to know about your game to get started. Like if you can give them like a list of like, oh, this is how I would basically spend, like this is what your budget would be spent on. Instantly, that's a lot more, appealing. So I think having that kind of plan ready is useful. But I would definitely say early on, again, not to say you can't, but I wouldn't worry too much about pitching that stuff early on. I just worry a lot more about just building up your value and just showing what you can do. So when those opportunities do come your way, it's a lot easier for people just to be like, yeah, this is a fit.
Absolutely. So, I mean, David, you've obviously drilled down into this to the nth degree with the Creator Collective in terms of like what you can do as a publisher to provide value. I think that'd be a really good time to kind of go through what you've been doing there and how you've tried to kind of simplify the whole process so we can get involved with more creators.
Absolutely. So the Deep Silver Creator Collective, or the DSCC that I'll refer to it as, for me, kind of answers a lot of questions and challenges I had from my perspective, but then also offers a huge amount of value to creators as well. My mission with the DSCC is to create the best creator program in gaming, and then kind of take that a step forward. And actually, I want it to be the best creator program, full stop. The Deep Silver Creator Collective really does a huge number of things. At the very, very least, it's a way for me to be able to track who has applied for a code for one of our games, for me to be able to fulfill those code requests, and for everyone to be able to leave happy and create brilliant content, and everyone's happy. That's kind of the minimum of what it does, because There was once upon a time, and kind of what we were saying about earlier, where there are so many different people involved, or there can be agencies, there can be CMs, there can be PRs, there can be, even just info at email addresses, info at deepsilver.com. There are all these different kind of touch points where people can email in and take, Deep Silver, we're global, and you really think about rolling that out between Deep Silver and Koch Media, then actually there are literally people in every country who could be receiving these code requests. At some point, they need to kind of make it to me, and I say, yes, no, not this time, that kind of, way of working. So at the very least, the Creator Collective is a brilliant way for me to be able to get to know a lot about our creators from the get-go. So what it is that you go onto creators.deepsilver.com and you apply to be in the program. And once you're in the program, you'll then get, Metro Exodus is coming out tomorrow, who wants a code, those kind of things there. But it's a way that you can say the type of games you're into, the type of Deep Silver games that you've played before, the hardware that you play on, if you play on PC or console, who your favorite creators are, who you would love to work with, what are the goals for your channel, like tell me more about you. It's a way to really kind of streamline and get to know a lot about our creators early on, because what I'm trying to do is really build a nice, diverse portfolio of creators that we work with, from the very, very small up to the very, very big. And how can we then do some really exciting things with these creators that no one else is doing? So I'm trying not to kind of spill too many beans, but I get excited about it as well.
I'm going to pass the wine, and we'll get some more information out of you.
Absolutely. But there are specific, I don't even want to call it merch because that's underselling it, but there are specific physical items that are being made right now for members for the Deep Silver Creator Collective that are one of a kind, or the only way you can get them is by being part of our program. There's stuff that I'm having made for our game Chorus, where there are literally 3 of these things being made in the world. 2 of those things are going to creators in the Deep Silver Creator Collective. It's really great ways to be able to get stuff that just no one else has, and it's almost like a gift. In fact, it is a gift. It is a kind of cool thing for you to have that you will only get by being in the Creator Collective. Okay, nice. That's a really nice, cool thing to have. And I'm doing that for a number of our products and a number of our games, even doing stuff that is purely just Deep Silver Creator Collective branded, because, once you're in the DSCC, you should really feel like you're part of a club and really feel like you're part of a cool movement within the gaming space, particularly because there's such a focus on smaller creators as well. This is not something that's just for the big guys. This truly is from creators who probably just a little bit beyond just starting out. You've kind of get a little bit of traction, but you're still very much at the early days in the start of your career, without a doubt. And then it's okay. So if I'm doing a AAA campaign and I'm working with some of the largest creators in the world, how can I include our creators who are in the DSCC? If we're doing something with a 10 million subscriber channel, how can I include our DSCC members in that? And there are some times where that's actually really quite easy and quite natural, and some stuff that I'm dying to talk about, but I can't yet. And there are some stuff where it's a little bit more of a challenge. But, there are so many great opportunities that can happen that when it does, it's really quite exciting, particularly where if you are a smaller creator and you're a fan of the larger creator you've been paired up with, that's magic. And then also as well, from the larger creator's perspective, there's a lot of content that can help create as well. But equally, it's opportunities to come to early access events and behind the scenes events and press events, things that traditionally only gaming media go to. But now if you're a member of the DSCC, you'll be invited to these things as well, which means that you can start creating content for your channel earlier, when kind of some of the big press outlets are writing about things, and sometimes you feel like, how can they know about stuff so much earlier, and like a story breaks and that kind of then sparks a load of content. You can be at that same event, that same press event, and get that same briefing. And often we'll do creator specific briefings and creator specific things as well. So there's cool things like that. If E3 was on E3 this year or E3 next year, if it's going to be a physical event again, we would take smaller creators who would never have the opportunity to go to E3. We'll fly a small selection of these creators out there, pay for the whole experience because they're part of the creator collective. For me, it's about, and this is a lesson that I really did learn at Insomnia, is, you know, you've got to nurture your relationships with talent and make sure that if you're constantly always just jumping on people when they are massive, you miss out on a lot of opportunity and you miss out on a lot of relationship. If you can start working with creators when they're much, much smaller, just the stuff that you can do together, the relationship that you can build and the content that you can make is infinitely better. I look at some of those creators who, I'll give you an example, at Insomnia, I first met a creator who I'm sure a lot of you guys will know, called I'm Alex. I met Alex when he had about 150,000 subscribers. I accosted him at the buffet table at the influencer event one day because I was like, I've seen your videos. It's great to have you at the event, blah, 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 blah. I'm David, I look after talent. And then, you know, that kind of relationship grew and we became really good friends. And now, you know, he's a much larger channel, but we did so much more along that journey and, you know, really worked with Alex a lot at Insomnia and grew his kind of presence at the show. And we didn't just go from kind of, you know, we didn't just go from kind of him not having a meet and greet to him having, you know, being on our stage shows and having one of the biggest meet and greets. Like we grew it together and got to that point and really scaled it nicely. So kind of throughout that journey, all of his fans were happy and they got to meet him, whilst we also kind of gave him more exposure at the event, and we as an event got more out of him as well. You know, it's very much win-win. So yeah, I think that is scratching the surface of what we can do at the Creator Collective. But my point is really about building relationships between brands and creators, and don't just think as a creator it's certainly not just about you trying to build relationships with brands. The brands want to do it as well, just as badly. So yeah, which is what when I was saying earlier about don't feel like you're annoying people. You're not at all. They want to build and grow and nurture relationships themselves. I know I certainly do. Trying to get my line right now as well. I might turn
I think you've got like an autofocus thing. It's kind of making me feel a bit seasick at the minute. I'm kind of the Ewok has returned. Cool. I mean, that's all great stuff, man. And I think having the confidence to reach out, and like 90% of the stuff you guys said a bit about relationships, and I think the big thing is that we all live in a digital world, so the cut through of meeting someone in person is huge, like compared to a kind of a more traditional business. I think like, it's far more memorable sitting down and having a beer with someone and having a story to share than it is sending someone an email and a pitch deck. And I think that's really valuable, and I hope these guys take that on and try and get to as many events as possible. I mean, not just to meet people like you, Davey, but also to meet each other. Because I think building things like stream teams, I mean, something I wanted to ask you, Alex, was obviously you've gone from being a single creator into having a group of creators, and how that kind of changed your proposition really and how you were viewed. Because obviously a lot of these guys will be in stream teams, they'll be in organizations, but they're not necessarily using that power. Like obviously pitching as a stream team of 20 people to a publisher, on paper you'd think it'd be a much more successful venture. But it'd be great to think to kind of understand a bit about how that's changed things for you.
I think stream teams is a bit of a different thing, because obviously like I think the reason a lot of people don't always pitch stream teams is because a lot of the time, not to say all the time, but a lot of the time stream teams are more so made of like, hey, we're a group of friends, we're just going to be like a team on Twitch, which is cool in that respect, but because it's comprised of people from different channels and therefore by extension different brands, it's not really something you, not to say you can't, but it's not something you will always pitch. Like for example, we have the RX Gaming stream team as a means to drive people to other streamers, to sort of say like these people are people that we think are really good. So obviously I'll happily vouch for anyone on the team and be like, yo, those people are great. But at the same time, because they all own their own brands, we wouldn't pitch the team or something, because obviously it's not in our position to say, hey, these guys are going to be doing this. We can obviously go to them, we can chat to our team, you know, we have like a chat for them, we can be like, hey guys, you know, if this thing's coming up, it definitely opens up opportunities. And I do think there's scope to use that in the future. But I think because especially in the creator space, although people work together, everyone is also their own entity. That's slightly different. But obviously if you look at it on the RX Gaming side of things, specifically on the channel, which is obviously myself, 269 and Paradise Central, that obviously still creates a great value proposition, because within that 269 and Paradise Central stream, so now when it comes to speaking to publishers, and also 267 and Paradise have their own channels as well as the Arix Gaming channel. So now we have an interesting value proposition where, say, a game comes out, we can say, all right, we can cover your game on the Arix Gaming channel, or we can cover your game on the Arix Gaming channel. Plus, we can do streams across 3 different channels. We can do multi-streams. We can spread content across X different social channels. So definitely in that respect, it is useful because it then means that we suddenly can say, we can amplify your game 3 times versus just across one place. So it definitely has its value, 100%. But yeah, teams like the conventional Twitch stream teams, I think is still kind of a sort of halfway thing. I think if it was a team 100% comprised of people all in the same network or things like that, then there could definitely be value for that. But yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought actually, like whether these guys should really be part of these kind of bigger stream teams, even though it's a great networking opportunity, as you say, it's a great place to make friends, but would they really be better tracking down a few people with the same kind of belief system as them, same kind of content they're making, like same kind of moral approach and things? So when you approach a brand, you know that you've got those people that are all kind of related to each other and do the same kind of thing, but with triple the number.
It can be useful from like a discovery point of view, though, because to use it conversely, as opposed to pitching it to people, we have had situations before where publishers have reached out and be like, hey, we're looking for some people to like check out our game. Can you recommend anyone? And then instantly I can be like, well, look, I can vouch for anyone in the Arix Gaming stream team. There are people in US, there are people in like anywhere in the world. So in that situation, it works better because we're all for like helping other people as well. I think that's the other thing that I like is super important to stress in this space is that some people. There's this weird thing where some people just get weirdly guarded in this space. And they're like, I can't help other people. I can't share my information because suddenly I'm gonna lose. It's like, no, the internet is a very big place. Like, never be afraid to help people or share stuff because if ultimately it's the harsh reality is if you help someone and then people leave your channel to go to somewhere else, the problem is that your channel, you need to look at yourself and be like, what do I need to do to fix? Because if people are leaving you, then obviously you need to address your own content. But if you do great content and you introduce someone to someone else, they're not going to leave you. They're just going to watch both content, right? Think about how many YouTube videos you watch. You don't suddenly say, I'm going to stop watching my favorite YouTuber because I've discovered a new favorite YouTuber, right? So I think 100% it goes hand in hand with networking, but never be afraid to help people, do things like that because it just makes it better for everyone, right? So yeah, we'll always do that.
Awesome, man. It's an interesting one, isn't it? It's kind of trying to strike that balance, minimize risk on both sides as well, which is definitely a part of that. Because the bigger a team gets, you've got 20, 30, 40, 50 people in there. You're more than likely going to have someone in there that may kind of overstep the mark or not quite fit kind of what you're looking for.
Yeah.
If you had an experience with this, Davey, where you've pulled an organization, because obviously that Arix Gaming, you look at like the dream team, like relatively concentrated kind of groups of people that have all successes in their own rights. Have you kind of had experience dealing with those kind of situations?
Oh, completely. And actually, just as Alex was talking, it really reminds me actually of, so many creators that I work with now regularly that I met through another creator. And there seems to be in these groups as well, there's always one or two of them who are the people who, they're the kind of magnets, and they'll go out and they will kind of speak to a brand or be working with a brand and introduce them to a brand. In the event space, you get this a lot because often you'd get, if you have a creator who's at the event who's invited, they will say, can my mates come, or can my friend's a YouTuber, can they come and be a YouTuber at the show as well? And it'd be like, oh, okay, well, who's your friend? And then, you meet them that way. And then a year's time, they're headline guests at the show as well because they've grown so much in that year. And it's kind of the same way, think about how effective collabs have just been in general on YouTube for as long as the platforms existed. It's similar, but in real life. So, absolutely, I've been introduced to so many incredible creators through other incredible creators. And I think there is definitely a kind of, strength in numbers approach. And particularly in gaming, right? When you're looking at, depending on what the game is, there are some games where if you're marketing them, you might be marketing them purely about story. But, like Metro is a great single player story experience. There are some games that are much more about multiplayer, but then at the same time, some games do both. And for me as an influencer marketer, what I want from that content is to see friends playing together and having fun, because that's the experience you're trying to show. it's about having fun together with friends. We call that the socially constructive narrative. It's about you being friends together, playing the game and having fun. And it's, you as the viewer saying, I want to have fun with my friends playing that game. So actually working with a group of friends is, all comes back to authenticity. We want the content and the creators and the relationships to be as authentic as possible. So as much as having a kind of stream team, if it's more formal, or just kind of a group of friends a group of creators that you work with together, that ultimately provides a huge amount of opportunities. And, Sidemen, eBoys, Yogscast, so many more people, even the early days of the vloggers, like we was talking about before. There's always a group of them, whether that be kind of a formal, we are together called this, or if there's just, people together who produce content together, make content together. Yeah, safety in numbers, strength in numbers. I love it.
Awesome. So we've only got about 10 minutes left kind of to have a chat. So we've got a few questions that have come in from Twitch. So I'd like to run a few of these past you, if that's all right. So apologies for the surprises, but they're all relatively civilized, so don't worry. So this one's from Serrated Viper, Chris, who actually came to our Reactor live event that Eric's very kindly chaired for us. So hopefully we'll get a chance to do that again one day. And it's one to Davey. So did you go through any kind of formal process when you were trying to identify where your skill set lied and you were moving into influencer marketing? Did you just follow your passions to get there, or did you sit down and physically look at it and go, okay, what are my skills? I'm suited to do this, and then head down and go?
It was for me. It's about do what you love. Like, don't get me wrong. In this industry, in any job, but gaming specifically, you will do long days. Alex would say the same thing as a creator. You will be working, a long old day. At an event, 18, 19, 20-hour days sometimes. For me, it's I want to get out of bed every day, do a job for that long, and love every minute of it. And it was just about following a passion. Same thing when you hear people say, oh, what degree do I want to do? I really want to do media, but people say there are no jobs in media. My mum says I should do maths, or my mum says I should do English. Like, which one is it? Do what you love, because you'll always do better in something that you just enjoy doing. So, no, it was a case for me of, I really, really like doing this. I really love marketing. I really love, YouTube content at the time, and then that grew when live stream platforms grew and everything else, and it all happened quite naturally. But if I ever stopped enjoying it, I would do something else. But luckily that day hasn't come.
Well, there's actually an interesting question in there that leads on from that a little bit. So we'll ask this one to Alex. So if your community hadn't grown, your channel hadn't grown to where you are now, what do you think you'd be doing? Do you think you'd still be at Microsoft? Do you think you'd still be in the industry? Or
I feel like Microsoft, because the only reason I decided to go full time is obviously I worked 3 years at Microsoft, and then the team that I was on basically sort of like dissolved, and then they moved to the States. So effectively, I got made redundant. So I was in that weird position where I went full time, and the channel was only 14,000 subscribers, which in the kind of living off of the kind of thing is tiny. But I was like, I basically sort of had that position where I was like, I'm going to take a year and try and make it work. And we managed to that was the year we went from like 14,000 to 100,000, and we're like, we kind of decided, okay, we can try and build this. What would I do if I wasn't? If I wasn't doing this, I probably would have just used my experience in Microsoft and gone back into gaming, because I like being in the industry. But then having said that, I think I realized towards the end of it that I definitely realized towards the end of it that the production side of things was more fun, because I was doing so many different sort of varied things. I was working, it was kind of like one of those, although it was production, like I'm sure David, you'll know as well, you wear many hats in the industry, right? So it's, we ended up doing events and community stuff and content and things like that. So yeah, honestly, I don't really know where I'd be. I guess I would probably still be in the industry, probably, because games are just like in my blood, right? So either that or now I'll be like living in a gym, basically.
Yeah, or riding a longboat.
Yeah. Going to war, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Awesome. Cool. So I'll just have a quick dig around for a couple more questions for you guys. So we've got a question, actually, a practical one about the Deep Silver creator form, if that's okay, Davey. So
Yeah.
the question that says, which creator do you want to collab with that's on the form? So does that apply strictly to other content creators, or could it be people in the gaming industry? So just asking for a little bit of guidance on that question, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's literally who. For me, that question is all about learning who you like, and kind of perhaps who your inspiration is. So, there will be at some point an instance where I can look at someone's form and actually make that happen. So if I'm working with someone on a campaign and someone has said, I really want to work with, if someone has said, I really want to work with Arix, and I'm doing a campaign with Arix, it's, hang on, well, actually, maybe we can make
it would, to be honest. But...
Yeah, but, there are some instances where we can make that happen, which is what the DSCC is all about, but also it just gives an insight into who you like. Just answer it. There's, for that form, there is no right or wrong answer at all. Awesome. Apart from how many subscribers you got. Don't lie. It's
on the internet. We will find it. Awesome. So there's another interesting one in here as well, which kind of relates back to a topic we were covering in terms of how to access people in the industry. And I've asked, how important is it to have a LinkedIn account? Because it's honestly not something that had crossed my mind particularly to like go in and start digging around for like company structures and all that kind of stuff. Is it something you both use? Sorry, I've done the thing where I didn't actually ask an individual question again. Then haven't I? Could cause some confusion. So yeah, sorry, Alex, we'll go with you first.
So I'll be honest. I didn't. I honestly, I never actually thought about that. But it's actually like a fantastic tip. I guess I was sort of fortunate because I started back in the Microsoft days. I'd already done a lot of networking when I worked at Microsoft. Then when I went to YouTube, so I kind of already had the established contact list. So I was quite fortunate in that respect. But you raised a great point. Like I actually only just logged back into my LinkedIn account the other day for like the first time in.
I'm gonna try and find your profile picture to see if it was from like 10 years ago.
I finally updated it because I think I got involved. Yeah, that's what it was. I got involved in Ben Francis from Gymshark did like a video about small businesses, and he posted it. And then my brother basically posted that video on LinkedIn. And he's like, "You should probably update your profile picture." I was like, "Okay." So I logged in. But no, that's actually a fantastic point because one of the things that I used back in the day when we first started, I can't even remember the name of it, but back in the day, there was a website which you could access if you were games media, which basically listed contact emails for like all the PR in the UK. It was basically like an address book for like PR. So that used to be our go-to. It'd be like, oh, you know what, I want to reach out to someone at Sony. This is the current PR for Sony. There's the email. Oh, that was great. Like I don't think that exists anymore. So but then LinkedIn can now be that thing, exactly as you say. So yeah, I hadn't personally thought about it, but I would say that's fantastic because that can be the challenge. Because for some companies you deal with PR directly, other companies you deal with CMs, other companies you deal with agencies, and while a lot of people are on Twitter is still not always the preferred contact point. So yeah, if you can use something like that, I'd 100% say it doesn't hurt. Like it literally doesn't hurt. Even if you're like, a lot of people will be like, oh, I don't want to use this social media account because I don't use Facebook or I don't use this. Like, look, if you want to get somewhere, just make it. You don't have to use it for anything else. Just make it and go. So
it'd be interesting actually is if on the publisher side started getting messages on LinkedIn from creators, because I imagine the cut through you get there would be huge because you just don't expect it. Like you just get a shock on your face.
Well, I'm always surprised. Like I'm connected with creators on LinkedIn, and I'm often surprised at actually just who's on there. There are a lot of people who are just starting out, which I think is fab, and there are also a lot of creators who are, who have management, but they still have their own LinkedIn profile, and they post stuff and interact with people all the time. And it's.
Oh, so you're cutting out
right. You get a huge amount of cut through that way because people aren't there. But you can make one on LinkedIn to see. Oh, sorry. You can make one, but you don't. You can do it purely for the benefit of just looking. Oh, have I gone again?
No, you're right, I think.
Yeah, you're back.
The camera's kind of a bit fuzzy for me, but I'm not sure if that's me or you. So.
But by all means, you can make one and be really engaged. But on LinkedIn, you need to have a profile to see other people's profiles. So you could have one just as a bit of to understand those structures and understand who it is you need to speak to. You don't have to literally be mega active on there, but equally you can be. In fact, the DSCC is sponsoring an event in the UK called Clash of Creators, which is a super exciting event that's happening this July, which is all about the biggest creators on YouTube in the UK playing with some smaller up-and-coming creators. So for me, it was like, that's a no-brainer. That's exactly what the DSCC is all about. Let's sponsor this event. There's actually someone, a creator who I've been connected with on LinkedIn for probably about 3 years, but never worked with, but very much aware of who he is purely through LinkedIn. And now at Clash of Creators, we're looking like we're going to hire him to do something at that show. So, you know, it might take 3 years for something to happen, but that wouldn't happen if it wasn't for LinkedIn.
Yeah, I suppose like a message on LinkedIn carries a certain weight to it. I mean, it's obviously a professional platform, so people are often on there to meet people for either a transaction or to build a relationship because there's kind of something to collaborate on. So it's not something I'd ever thought of actually, but I can certainly see how something on there would be seen as a more serious attempt to contact someone from a business perspective. There's far less shit posting and memes on LinkedIn, which is of course a positive, but it's certainly a contrast.
You as a creator, until the point where you are represented, you are your own business development, right? You are your own salesperson, you are your own marketing person. So, you know, having a LinkedIn, you talk about yourself very differently to how you would on Twitter. I don't, to be fair, but I could see that some people would do that. So yeah, try it. Try as many. It's the same thing with content. Keep trying different things until it works. Until you find something that works for you. LinkedIn might never be the platform for you, but it also might get you, you know, some great connections and some work. It might take 3 years, but it might, you know, it might happen a lot sooner.
Awesome. So I don't know if you're breaking up for everyone, Davey, but you're a little bit crackly for me. Alex, is it the same for you?
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, Davey, and he's dead. Rip Davey, 2021.
No,
He's back.
sort of moving slowly.
And I'm not sure if it's worth dropping off and jumping back in, Davey. That'll probably screw Etski's camera layout up. That's right. So I think that's all we've got time for from our kind of discussion perspective. So thank you both for your insight. I was looking forward to this for a few weeks. There's so many questions I wanted to ask you from an industry perspective as well. We'll wait for David to return, see if he pops back in. No He's back.
Hey, there we go.
We have returneth. Welcome back. I'll just double check. Let's go okay with cameras.
Am I back?
Yeah, perfect. So I was just saying, so that's all we've got time for, I think it'd be really nice to catch up with you guys kind of off stream, just to pull some of that information together. So especially for application to the Creator Collective, it might be worth grabbing some of your kind of paid content as well, Eric, just to see kind of how you've approached it, to kind of link into that, to give these guys a bit of a reference for kind of how to approach that and build a series.
Sure.
That'd be really valuable. So yeah, thank you both so much. That was fantastic. Hopefully, when live events start to become a thing again, we can actually get you guys in a room and we can shake a bit more of that information out of you over a beer, because it's much much better to do that. Cool. So we've got a couple of jobs left to do. So the next thing we need to cover is our creator grant. So as I mentioned at the start, we launched this 2 months ago, and it's our opportunity to try and give something back, to try and contribute to the success of creators in our community. So as part of that, we're providing an item for streams. So it might be lighting, a new camera, new keyboard, whatever it is that creator wants. But they'll also get $100 store credit with Gamer Advantage, Advanced, and Evolve to hopefully continue to add to their setups at home. So we had some fantastic submissions this month, and it's really difficult to come to a decision. So inevitably, we have to look at how hard these guys are working, their trends, how close they are to partnership, like making sure we can really make an impact for these people. So this content creator has, over the last month, increased their viewers by 20%. Their hours watched up to 13,000, which is pretty insane considering where this chap was at a while ago, peaking at 227 viewers, and he's actually not yet partnered, I believe. Someone might be able to correct me on that, but I think he's actually still an affiliate. So very exciting time for him. And it's a content creator called Pigeon, who's from the Destiny community. So he's applied for, let's have to double check, so an Elgato key light, so to help out with his setup. So hopefully we can help him out there, get his streaming room looking a little bit better, get that lighting sorted. As we know, cameras and audio are two of the biggest areas where you can kind of make a quick improvement to your stream. So congratulations, Pigeon. Like, the submission was great. We're really pleased with what you've been doing out in the community as well. We've been watching you, see the positivity you're spreading out there. So we wish you the best of luck. So I can't actually see the chat. I'll have to pull that up to see if he's still in there. But congratulations. So we'll be in touch after the stream. The item you've asked for, we'll order direct and get it sent to you. And then we'll speak to our sponsors to get the code sent to you as well. So fingers crossed we can help with that continued fast trajectory. So the next thing we'd like to cover is from Davey's generosity, actually. So Davey very kindly offered today a couple of codes for Metro Exodus PC Enhanced. So we are actually going to pull a couple of names from chat. So Emma, have we had a chance to do that at all? We do. So we have Nemec the Gold and Baggy Noodle Arms, which is a fantastic name. So you're our winners of the code. So we'll have a chat with Davey after the stream and we'll get those sent to you. So if you can send a message over to Em, either via Twitter or via Discord, we'll get those codes over to you. So congratulations. So I know, Davey, you wanted to say a little bit about the game as well, because obviously it's an update to an existing. Oh, he's gone. And he's back. Can you hear us, Davey?
Sorry. I wanted to unmute and I pressed the camera.
It's your moment to shine as well.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yes. It'd be great just to hear a little
bit
about Metro Exodus in terms of what the enhanced version brings and what these guys are getting with the codes.
Absolutely. So it's all about taking. So Metro Exodus has always been viewed as an incredibly, incredibly graphical, intensive, beautiful, stunning game. What the guys at 4A have done is make that. Has taken that experience and made it kind of, ready for 2021. There's ray tracing. It's all about the kind of today's hardware, and they've just pushed the limits across the base game, Metro Exodus, the two kernels, and Sam's Story, the two DLCs, and have taken that, incredible graphical experience and just pushed it to the limits. It's insane what it looks like now. So much so that it needs this. It needs a new version of it to be able to. It's so huge, the update, that it literally requires a new download. If you currently have Metro Exodus, it's a free upgrade to everyone who already has it. So I think this speaks volumes for the guys over at 4A, where it's a free upgrade for those players who already have it on PC. But if you don't and you have a ray tracing capable card, this is the one to get, because it is insane what they've done. It's witchcraft. It looks amazing.
Awesome. Well, you very kindly provided a trailer for us as well, so we'll run that as soon as we've gotten off stream. So I suppose the last thing to do is just to say thank you both. I know you're both extremely busy people. You've got a lot going on. So thank you so much for your time. Obviously, it's always good to catch up anyway. So I'm very excited to see you both in person. So thank you from me. Thank you from Get Ret Labs. Thank you from our community for sharing your time. I say it's the most valuable commodity people can share with you. So thank you for that. And hopefully we'll see you at the next live event, hopefully at the back end of summer, when the world starts to get back to normal. So
fingers crossed.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Is there anything you guys like to say? Where can they find you on social media? How can they get onto the link for the Creator Grant, Davey? The Creator Collective.
Yeah, totally. So I'm Oh Hey Davey on Twitter. You can apply to be in the Creator Collective at creators.deepsilver.com. There's also a load more information there. And just a quick thing to say that, if you're here and you're watching this live stream, that already speaks volumes to kind of what your future is going to look like as a creator. Like, you putting this effort in now and attending things like this, that's already a huge tick. So, massive well done to everyone who's tuned in.
Awesome. Thanks, David. And how about you, Alex? Where can they find you?
You find me over on Twitter at Arix, or over on YouTube at Arix Gaming. And yeah, I'll just say just keep at it. The most important thing for 100% for everyone that's sort of starting out is you just need to you need to look at the bigger picture. Make sure you just look at it long term. Like, know that, you know, your first year, your first second year, your first 3 years might not even lead to much, but just be consistent, keep going. Always look at what you're doing and make sure you can realize what needs to be improved. Like, everyone, even the people at the very top, are always trying to improve their content. So know that, like, your stuff is never, like, it can always be improved. So just constantly self-evaluate, constantly step back and be like, what can I do better? What are other people doing? Keep grinding, and you'll get there. You'll get there. You just got to be consistent.
Make sure you guys check out Endgame London as well. Some amazing products on there. I've got the Switch case actually upstairs.
Yes, thank you.
Beautiful bit of kit. So some amazing merch on there for you that these guys have been working on very closely with publishers and business as well. So a good website to have a look at as well to see what you could create as a brand yourself as well. The other opportunities that are out there from just outside of the standard sponsored stuff and the paid content we've talked about. So thank you all again, and over to Etsky, who's going to run the Metro Exodus PC enhanced version for us. Thanks very much, guys.
Metro Exodus is a groundbreaking, story-driven first-person shooter combining a brutal fight for survival with dynamic exploration, unforgiving combat, and heart-pounding stealth. Built using developer 4A Games' proprietary engine, it was and remains a state-of-the-art graphical masterclass. With the release of the Xbox Series X and S and PlayStation 5 consoles, and the powerful new range of PC GPUs, Deep Silver and 4A Games are proud to announce a radical update to the game, leveraging the full ray tracing power of next-generation hardware. Welcome to the new, definitive version of Metro Exodus, available as a free upgrade for all owners of the original game. Ray tracing is one of the biggest technological leaps forward in real-time rendering, and for this release, 4A Games have completely overhauled their engine to provide a fully ray-traced lighting pipeline, only made possible by the technology powering next-gen consoles and ray-tracing-capable PC GPUs. Every single light source is now fully ray-traced, providing a richer, more believable and atmospheric game world. Soft, diffuse light penetrates through clouds, accurately illuminating the landscape across seasons and the day-night cycle, adding depth and authenticity beyond the use of traditional lighting systems. Interiors on the surface world feature realistic light and shadows, changing with the position, intensity, and hue of sunlight, making the strategic use of dark areas when playing stealthily feel more natural and dramatic. With the inclusion of ray-traced emissive lighting, this simulation even extends to dynamic light produced by campfires, muzzle flashes, incendiary grenades, and flamethrowers. To complement these dramatic advances in lighting and overall visual fidelity and performance, the included 4K texture pack adds an unrivaled level of detail to everything from gun models to Spartans, structures, and enemies. The addition of a field of view slider will give users the ability to widen their field of vision to suit their preferred playstyle, or just soak in the view. On Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, Metro Exodus will now run at a rock-solid 60 frames per second at 4K resolution, with full ray-traced global illumination and emissive lighting implemented throughout. On Xbox Series S, Metro Exodus outputs at 1080p, 60 frames per second, with all other enhancements applied.
Thank goodness you're okay.
Next-gen consoles will also benefit from dramatically reduced loading times thanks to the lightning-fast SSD storage, and additionally will support a host of platform-specific hardware features, including 3D audio and support for the PlayStation 5 DualSense controller. The Metro Exodus PC Enhanced Edition is much more than a patch. Delivered as an extra entitlement to PC owners of the game, this extensive standalone edition requires a ray tracing capable GPU as a minimum system requirement. The PC Enhanced Edition also includes advanced ray traced reflections, as well as DLSS 2.0 support on NVIDIA hardware, which offers sharper image details and increased frame rates and display resolutions.
There's only Metro, nothing else.
All of these enhanced features will be provided as a free upgrade on PlayStation 5, via smart delivery on Xbox Series X and S, and as a standalone enhanced edition for PC, rewarding current players with the definitive version of this post-apocalyptic masterpiece. And for newcomers, the Metro Exodus Complete Edition offers the original game, both DLC expansions, and all these enhancements in one incredible bundle. This update represents the perfect opportunity to experience the journey of Artyom and his squad of Spartans in a continent-spanning adventure rendered with a level of detail, realism, and immersion like never before.